Good evening. My name is Alexander Hagan. I'm the CEO of a small, medium-sized tech company. Without further ado, this is the third preview part of my research on who owns the media. In part one, and I'm looking at certain areas where the media all acts together to suppress or distort information that's quite obvious to the outsider. In the case of Ron Paul candidacy, they all came out with the exact same talking point, all the media channels, which was there are now three top-tier candidates. There's now top tier in this election, and they mentioned 1, 2, and 4. Ignoring Ron Paul, they called him wacky, which is a disservice to the 50% of people under 30 who support him in many polls. They've called him invisible and laughed. So he's been denied oxygen. There's been an order out to mock him, not take him seriously, and deny him oxygen. Okay, so this is clear. It's a distortion. It's a total travesty. Our journalists should be ashamed of themselves. There are no journalists left. There are a few that are, of course, counteracting this. Two on Fox, actually, Neil Cavuto and Judge Napolitano, actually. So at any rate, we were looking at who owns the media. And first of all, these are the companies that own the broadcast media: ABC, CBS, Comedy Central, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, and in this case, the Wall Street Journal. These are all the main video outlets. They control a lot of intellectual property. It's hard to see stuff that they don't have their fingers in. Okay, and so we looked at and analyzed who owned these companies. We found the same investment groups over and over, as I think I can show you. For example, if we go over to, for example, these are the investment firms we found, and we coded them against each of the outlets. And then what we did is we looked at their final positions, and I believe these were their final positions. Yes, and then we have this graphic here as well, showing Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock, Fidelity, and T.ROWE Price. These are the companies, let's see, who have invested in media companies, right? And so at any rate, then we go on and look at the top 10 banks have significant positions from the same group of 6. And in terms of government contractors, this is extremely interesting. Oh, there we go. Let's go back, sorry. Now these are all the government contractors. And these government contractors, let's see if I can, and here's the just the hard list. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Raytheon, Science Application, General Dynamics, KBR, and so forth. These are the companies that sell their services to the government. And so ultimately, what we found was that the companies that owned equity in the military industrial companies, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, were the same as owned ABC, CBS, CNN, etc. So then, to try to deconstruct it further, we looked at who owned one of these 6 investment companies, and the other 5 own it. So it becomes an impossible polyglot. And the main thing to emphasize is at the very top, you have the guys who play the marionette. So it's rather confusing. So this shows that the guy next to you, you're competing with, owns part of you. And one of the companies that you own owns part of you. So you'll find that the companies that they own have stock in these companies. So it loops around and loops around. So you ultimately want to look at a document that I created to try to make sense of all this. And here it is. So what you've got in this case is you've got the public sector officials who are seeking connections while in office and in the federal government, which is pretty much everybody. Then there are lobbyists. Lobbyists can provide these favors and ask for favors on behalf of corporations in this case. Then we have ideological pressures on the system of decision making. And in this case, I described AIPAC because there is a lot of very powerful Jewish people in the media They're not the sole factor, but some of the legacy people who started in the entertainment business, grew their businesses wildly to become media blockbuster houses, do support Israel and probably do support more of a forward deployment in the Middle East of the U.S. and other people, and that particularly concerns me. So I have to disclose my own concern, which is that I don't want us to be defeated militarily later by overspending on wasteful military now. So at any rate, these are the corporations and the sectors. So you've got banking and finance, which benefits greatly because the public sector simply prints money and they are able to make tons of money off of it every time the currency fluctuates, basically, or conditions fluctuate. Then you've got defense sector contractors. They want to see a strong corrupt bond between the public sector and themselves. So they're quite willing to spend money to have equities in media companies to influence those transactions and to keep the population pro-war. It's a minor cost because it's not just the defense sector whose benefits, it's also the disaster capitalist, oversees business development and reconstruction, and it also takes countries that may not currently be fully engaged in the equity of these companies, and by this having all this currency floating around, will, like in the case of Libya, it'll just immediately suck everything in Libya into the system, so it can be leveraged and equitized and securitized and packaged. So a lot of things get a shot in the arm when we have disaster capitalism go into an Iraq or a Libya here. And then you have these conglomerates that own the media companies, making it very difficult for anyone to get a voice because you have to deal with the very largest fish in the ocean. And then, of course, in turn, these companies are all owned by these private equity firms that are dancing the marionettes down here, which makes a mockery of the idea of a public corporation. So it's private companies that are protected doubly now that with Citizens United you can't know much at all about what people are doing with their money. There's no public declaration required for investing in these political action committees, and an unlimited amount may be spent. But these, in addition, private equity have much more minimal requirements than public corporations to disclose. Although I was able to obtain a surprising amount of information. So fundamentally, the relationships between these companies are so convoluted because every company has stock in every other company, and there are multiple different levels of relationship. So you could have a company 3 ranks down owning stock in the top level groups. So you have to fundamentally look at who are the top owners of equities in the U.S. generally as individuals, because all of these positions ultimately translate to individual wealth by and large. So at any rate, you can look at the top 10 people, the top 100, top 1,000 to get a sense of it. So what we looked at now, of course, is who are these top people? And let's see if I got that for you here. Top people. Not that one. Not that one. Actually, I think the best way to do this is, I think I've got it right here, right? Yeah. Okay, so here are the, view the complete list of the richest people in America. And anybody who doubts the seriousness of our being overtaken by the emerging 7 countries should just take a look at this Forbes list over time for the world's billionaires. See how quickly it's changing. So these are our people in the U.S. That are the top equity holders. Okay, so I have got this crunched into here somewhere. Let's see. I've got that crunched into here. Yeah, here we go. So, let's see. Yeah, okay, so these are the richest people in the U.S., and there's their worth over there, $59 billion. So we've got, these guys are all neocons. The Koch brothers, who funded a lot of the corporatist, corrupt, crony capitalist corporatist takeover of the Tea Party movement. the Waltons, who are also extremely right-wing, George Soros, who has used the responsibility to protect doctrine to run this game. Sheldon Adelson's ultra-right, the Waltons ultra-right, and then John Paulson, Forrest Mars, Jack Lamar's, etc. So this leads to a brief explanation, which is, so we have these small group of rich and powerful people that form into these different groups. And that's as far as I've gotten. So thank you, and good luck and good night.